One of the most famous events during the Second World War was the Blitz of London. Throughout this time, the capital and many other cities and regions across Britain had to endure heavy bombing campaigns, causing much fear, death and misery to the population. However, one of the most famous weapons launched by the Nazis and the Wehrmacht onto many countries in Europe was the V1 rocket. This weapon would become infamous throughout the Second World War and was known as the buzz bomb or the doodle bug by the Allies. The V1 was the first of Hitler's so-called vengeance weapons or V-weapons. In this video, we'll talk you through the history of the V1 and how it was used to terrorise a population. A common misconception is that the V1 was used during the Blitz, however this simply wasn't the case. So today join us as we look at the V1. To support the channel, please make sure to subscribe. The V1 rocket project began with Paul Schmidt and Professor George Hans Madelung submitting a design proposal to the Luftwaffe for a flying bomb. This design was innovative, using a jet engine, a pulse jet engine to be specific. Previously, flying bombs relied on using propellers in their design, and the idea of a flying bomb came around during the First World War. The Luftwaffe in 1940 refused to award a development contract after a proposal put forward by the Argus Motor & Company, in cooperation with C. Lorenz AG and Arado. In early 1942, Fritz Goslau and Robert Lusser, German engineers, sketched out a design of an aircraft with a pulse jet above the tail. This would become the basis for the future V1 rocket. Lusser produced a preliminary design in April 1942. When submitting the specifications, it included that the bomb would have a range of 186 miles, a speed of 435 miles per hour, and was capable of delivering a half-ton warhead or bomb. Project Fieseler FI-109, as it was known, was approved on the 19th of June 1942 and given the codename Kirschkern or Cherry Stone. After much testing, the first flight took place on the 10th of December 1942 after the bomb was dropped by a Focke-Wulf FW-200. On Christmas Eve that year, the V1 flew 1,000 yards for around a minute after being launched from the ground. On the 26th of May, Germany decided to put the V1 rocket and the V2 into production. One common misconception, as mentioned earlier, is that the Blitz saw V1 rockets being fired at London, but this wasn't the case as it came much later in the war. One of the best things about the V1 that made it innovative was the guidance system used on the bomb. It was developed by Askania in Berlin to regulate altitude and airspeed. A pair of gyroscopes controlled the yaw and the pitch, while the azimuth was maintained by a magnetic compass. The altitude was maintained by a barometric device. The gyros were driven by two spherical tanks that contained compressed air at 900 pounds per square inch. The magnetic compass on the V1 was located at the front. The RLM first planned to use a radio-controlled system for precision attacks, but the Nazi government decided to use the missile against London. Some flying bombs were however equipped with basic radio transmission equipment. Once over the English Channel, the radio would be switched on and a Morse code signal would direct the aircraft. An odometer on board inside the nose determined when the target area had been reached. Before launch, it was set to count backwards from a value that would reach 0 on arrival at the target, even in a prevailing wind. As the missile flew, every 30 rotations of the propeller, the number on the odometer would decrease by 1. When the countdown reached 0, 2 detonating bolts were fired and the V1 would enter a steep dive. This could lead to a buzzing noise being heard in the vicinity, telling people when a bomb would hit. On board the V1 was a high-grade 850kg warhead made of amatol, which would cause a lot of devastation. It would be launched using a Walter Catapult, which would accelerate the V1 to a launch speed of over 200 miles per hour, well over the minimum required operational speed of 150 miles an hour. The V1 would reach Britain at around 340 miles per hour and would accelerate over London at around 400 before striking. The launch sites could launch around 15 V1s a day, however as the war went on, the rate of fire was hard to maintain. Overall, only 25% of V1s launched hit their targets, with the majority being lost due to being shot down or being mechanically unreliable and having issues with the guidance system. In London, the missile attacks commenced on the 12th of June 1944. 4 launch battalions operated from the Pas de Calais area. they had been supplied with missiles, water catapults, fuel and other equipment. Not one of the missiles launched on that first day reached England, and only 4 did on the 13th of June. The next attempt to start an attack occurred on the 15th of June when 144 rockets reached England, and 73 of these hit London, whilst 53 V1s hit Portsmouth and Southampton. With this attack, the damage was widespread, and the V1 was seen initially as a devastating weapon, with President Eisenhower ordering attacks on launch sites as a big priority. As the war went on, with the capture of sites used to launch attacks against England, the V1 would then be switched to bomb strategic points in Belgium, including the port of Antwerp. Attacks on Antwerp and Brussels began in October 1944 and lasted until the end of March 1945. These shorter range journeys improved the accuracy of the V1, and the flight level was also reduced to 3,000 feet. The port of Antwerp was seen as a key site for the Allies and the Germans, and many of the countermeasures protecting the port were based on using radar and anti-aircraft fire here. In the Antwerp area, 4,883 V1s were detected, and only 4.5% of these fell within the designated area. The anti-aircraft fire was very effective, and only 211 of these bombs got through the defences. However, when they did, they caused much damage, death and destruction. In Britain, launches were met by a number of different countermeasures, including the use of barrage balloons and aircraft such as the Hawker Tempest or the Gloucester Meteor. These measures were very successful, and about 80% of V1s were destroyed by August 1944. Meteors were fast enough to catch the V1s, but did suffer from issues with their cannons. However, around 1,000 V1s were destroyed by the aircraft. The operational height of the V1 also brought it into the range of the Bofor's anti-aircraft guns, which could shoot down the rockets. Overall, the V1's legacy as a horrific and scary weapon of war is an interesting one. Its success was limited by the effectiveness of anti-aircraft defences established in its areas of operation. However, when it did strike, it caused devastation and much destruction. In fact, on the 30th of June 1944, a V1 struck a children's home in Kent, killing 29. In London, the V1s would kill hundreds when they would get past the defences. In London in July, 92 V1s hit the Capitol, resulting in the deaths of 174 people. One even hit Lewisham Market and killed nearly 60 people. In a future video, we will look at the V2, the second vengeance bomb developed by the Nazis that further compounded misery across Britain and parts of Europe. Once again, thank you for watching. To support the channel, please make sure to subscribe. Once again, thank you for watching.